Defense made a motion for a mistrial. Prosecutor was up to some fuckery. Potentially damaging evidence, no basis for it. The judge specifically said, do not ask that question. Do not use that as evidence. She walked right down the path and asked the question. It may be over on Tuesday morning. Batman Bruce Wayne bitch snitch. Gerald Brooks, your constitution does not apply to me because I'm a sovereign citizen, a traveler on the land, I'm the Moorish Empire or whatever, bitch snitch. Because they're so fucking absurd. If you want to be a sovereign citizen, just do yourself a favor first. Go to YouTube here and just get every sovereign citizen that's ever been before. Find me one that won. God dang, you're right. Don't go down this. It's not the path. Don't have time for stupidity. Some clever dick on the internet didn't find the great loophole in all of the world's law. Bitch snitch. God dang, you're right. God dang, you're right. Traveler on the land. Moorish Empire, traveler on the land, bitch snitch, Moorish Empire, God dang, you're right, traveler on the land, bitch snitch, the late evening U.S. people.
Who could it possibly be? Was it, oh, I don't know. Satan?
Hey, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night. Whoever you are, wherever you are, I'm just glad, hey, you're sitting here watching me. It's Thursday. It's Retro Trial Day. And on Retro Trial Thursday, guess what we do? Retro Trials. We're coming to the end today, plus maybe 2 more weeks to wrap up the Florida v. Donald Hartung trial. The Donald Hartung trial took place in 2020. It involves a 2015 murder. We'll talk about that in just a little bit after we get done fellowshipping and philosophizing. We're sort of waiting for things to populate right here. Let all the YouTube word get out that we're here, and we are waiting for you to join us. Just real quick, next week likely will not be a Retro Trial Thursday because Megan Fox and I are going to be breaking a new and very, very interesting case involving some very well-known figures in YouTube case and lawyerdom. So that'll begin on Monday if everything goes according to plan. It should run at least through the entirety of next week. You do not want to miss any of that. Our second stream today, we did the Sarah Boone hearing a little bit earlier. And if you're watching this on replay and don't want to sit here and wait for this thing to populate and wait for us to get into the meat and bones, just scroll across till you get to the intermission sign 4 or 5 minutes from now, and that's where we will start. But I hope you all had a great evening, great morning, great night, whatever. It's good to be here for the second stream of the day. It was a holiday here, so I did nothing. It was good. I just relaxed and enjoyed myself the entire day. Now I'm here with you guys, so I just couldn't ask for anything better. All right. Well, actually, I don't really have anything to talk about. We're kind of all caught up. No big housekeeping stuff other than the normal. Thursday. This is our smallest This is our smallest stream of the week. This is an incredibly niche audience. It's just where we sit and we chat and we chill with each other. So we got 71 people here, 41 likes. Get down there and hit that like button, everybody, and take our like and subscribe poll. ChatGPT sucks. I couldn't think of anything related to this. This trial at all. I couldn't think of a poll that had anything to do with anything. It was stressful. I kind of hit a writer's block. And I couldn't think of anything. And so what I did is I thought I would use ChatGPT. ChatGPT could come up with a witty poll, right? Just so I said, I typed in the phrase, a short answer. It was like a 4-choice short answer, multiple choice, comedic. I can't remember how I phrased it, but it was basically a funny short answer for multiple choice question about what is the problem with male witches. And I tried for 15 minutes of just hitting refresh, retry to get this thing to get stupid, super woke ChatGPT to say something was wrong with male witches. And it wouldn't. I swear to God, it would crank out these 4 answers, and every one of them would start out with, nothing is wrong with male witches. There's nothing unusual about male witches. Male witches are okay. I mean, it wouldn't say male witches are wrong because, or it wouldn't even acknowledge. I mean, it was a joke. Come on, ChatGPT. It was so woke. It was horrible. And it became sort of a challenge just to hit that refresh button on the ChatGPT dialogue, just to see if I could get it to give one answer that dealt with male witches being wrong. And it wouldn't do it. It would literally start out with nothing. And then it would go on to say, you know, something stupid that had nothing to do with being funny, being a joke, or being in reason. So it was really bad. So what we did, by we, I mean me, I just said the stupidest shit, and then I gave up. As you can tell by the like and subscribe poll. So hit that like and subscribe button despite the poll. We've got 79 here, 49 likes. Get down there and smash that like button, people. 30 of you, just get down there. I need it today. And take our stupid like and subscribe poll, which is just designed to make you like it. Like, subscribe, and vote. What is the problem with Dennis Hartung? You'll notice that that's the problem with Dennis Hartung. It should be Donald, not Dennis. Yes, I tried Warlock just to see. It wouldn't do that. The closest it got was to say nothing, but sometimes they can be confused and have to. This is when I used Warlock. Is sometimes nothing is wrong with warlocks, but they can be confused by having to explain the difference between them and witches. It was just dumb. It was really stupid. So the only thing wrong with Dennis Hartung, according to ChatGPT, is the name should be Donald. What's the problem with Donald Hartung, male witch? Has a broom, didn't read the instructions, keeps using cauldron for cappuccino. This is a really stupid poll, and now thank God this is the last option. This is hands down the worst poll I've ever written for this thing. So all right, we're gonna end it there, and we're gonna get into the trial because I'm just floundering. Please hit the like and subscribe button. As always, super chats and whatnot will be pulled up if and when they are received, and they're always welcome. All right, let's do our silly intermission and then get on with it. Oh, I'm ready to just throw in the towel today. Here we go. Let's start. Where's our intermission music? Got to get the intermission music queued up. All right. See you in a few seconds.
This is is a brief intermission.
You're very much appreciated for saying that I'm appreciated. I appreciate that.
This is a brief intermission.
Thank you very, very much. I'm going to have a search and or seizure. More likely the seizure. I appreciate you.
This is a brief intermission.
I appreciate you. Okay, we are going to get into the Donald Hartung murder trial. Some of you may not be familiar with this, but it's not that complicated. They being the prosecution, say he murdered his stepbrothers and his half-brothers, murdered his half-brothers and his mother. Murdered his mother apparently because she cut him out of the will, and murdered one half-brother because allegedly that half-brother did something very inappropriate to his son, and he killed the other half-brother because he couldn't leave one alive as a witness. That's what the prosecution is saying. Of course, there really hasn't been any evidence to support that. The only direct evidence they've had against him is a prison snitch who was one of the most ridiculously untrustworthy prison snitches I've ever seen in my life. And that includes Munch from the Zachariah Anderson trial. This guy here, his name was Percival or Purvis or something. He was bad. I mean, he was, oh yeah, he told me that he was a witch and that he was casting spells on people, and it's just so stupid. It was really, really bad. That's the only direct evidence they have, and that's just through a prison snitch. His DNA is everywhere in the house, but he visited them often. He visited them once a week and cooked dinner for them and then hung out with them for a while. So the fact his DNA is on various parts of the house and various pieces of equipment is not a big deal. There's a nosy neighbor that said, oh yeah, he comes and goes and these are the times, but nothing really directly tying him to it. The defense started their case last week with the Wiccan minister. They touted him as a high priest, but turns out he was only a minister. And he didn't really do anything other than to say, don't be scared of Wiccans. We don't commit we don't carry out human sacrifices. We don't drink blood. We don't cast spells on people. That's really it so far. That's the entirety of the trial. And then there's just weirdly named people. There's Detective Infinger, Detective Coxwell, and they had to go through the rear entrance because the front was locked. And we heard a lot about them going in through the rear. Infinger and Coxwell did. That's kind of this trial in a nutshell. And we got 3 weeks left, counting today. So, okay, that's it. Let's jump into it. Our first super chat of the evening comes from Jonathan Irwin. Did he wave his wand in court? Jokes. Just the jokes that I can't say, but thank you. Thank you for that. And again, super chats will be brought up as they're read. We can unlock the emotional support potato pig dog cam if we want. That's our first goal of the evening. Until then, let's just rock and roll with the trial, shall we? All right. Embiggen, do we get closed captions today? Looks like the answer to that is no. Only one of these have had closed captions. Sorry, people that would like closed captions. Today is not your lucky day. You can turn them on my stream, and hopefully YouTube won't make them even worse. But all right, let's go with the Wiccan minister has just finished his testimony, and they're calling their next witness. And it helps if I take
Spell your last name for the court reporter.
Dennis Keith Waller, Waller.
Mr. Waller, can
Dexter
you
back
give
there
us
with a beard.
a background of your education as well as your professional qualifications?
I have a Bachelor of Science degree in Police Administration from Michigan State University. I have a Master of Science in Public Administration from Florida International University.
Police practices
I
consultant.
have over 3,700 hours of law enforcement training. And
so he's the guy, I guess, that's going to say, ooh, the police did something wrong.
I've served as both I've served in a variety of law enforcement positions.
Have
I've
you
taught
really?
at the college and university level, and I've also been actively involved in training law enforcement officers.
Have you ever been the chief of police of any police department in the United States?
Yes, I was chief of police in Ripon, Wisconsin. I was also the interim chief
In
of
what?
police, campus police for the
Wait, what? He didn't say reckon, did he? Come on, really? What did he say?
training law enforcement officers.
Have you ever been the chief of police of any police department in the United States?
Yes, I was chief of police in Ripon, Wisconsin.
A Ripon. Okay, I thought he was mispronouncing Racine, and I'm like, come on, dude, you were never a police chief there. All right.
I was also the interim chief of police, campus police for the University of Wisconsin, Platteville, for about 5 or 6 months while they were selecting a new chief.
Have you ever been a police officer in the state of Florida?
I have.
And where was that?
Miami-Dade Metro Police Department and also South Miami Police Department.
Ooh, he was Miami
And
Vice.
as far as your educational background is concerned, were you ever the coordinator of any criminal justice program?
I was.
Come on.
Was a coordinator or department chair of the criminal justice program at Craven Community College in
This is
New Bern,
weirdly
North Carolina.
leading. It's not important, but it's still weirdly leading.
Were you ever a director of law enforcement training for any college or university?
Yes.
Where was that?
After spending 2 years at Craven Community College, I transferred within the system to
Ooh,
Wake
Craven.
Technical College in Raleigh. I was the director of law enforcement training there. Basically, I was in charge of a regional police training academy.
And
So this is so funny.
have
don't
you
know
ever
why.
been an adjunct lecturer or instructor to any universities or police agencies?
Yes.
Can you give us some of them?
University of North Florida, the Shaw University in Raleigh, North Carolina State University in Raleigh, Marion College or Marion University of Fond du Lac.
Fondle
There
what?
were, probably 4 or 5 different technical colleges in Wisconsin where I've been a adjunct instructor.
Have you ever been an adjunct instructor
hiding from
for
witches.
the Internal Revenue Service?
He could be hiding from the
Yes,
Internal
they're,
Revenue Service too.
I think it was their internal investigative unit for the criminal investigation component for the IRS.
And are you a member of numerous professional associations?
I am and or have been, yes.
How about for the American College of Forensic Examiners?
I was a member of that for 20 years. I was achieved the status of fellow for the American
He's a
College
jolly
of
good
Forensic
fellow.
Examiners. There's a subunit within that, the American Board of Law Enforcement Experts, and I was a diplomate for that subunit.
And
Swan
have
Lake
you been
lady breaking
involved
out
in
the Wizard of
other
Oz.
Professional associations for law enforcement agencies?
Yes, sir. I've been a member of the Wisconsin Chiefs of Police Association. I'm currently a member of the International Association of Chiefs of Police, have been for 30 plus years. I've been involved with Law Enforcement Training Officers Association.
Wait, Ike makes a good point. So the expert witness was acting police chief for UW Platteville, whilst they chose a new chief, but they didn't choose him. That's a very good point. Thank you, Ike, for being a member for 14 months. That's appreciated. Seriously, that makes you wonder.
The International Association of Law Enforcement Firearms Instructors. I believe I got that right. A variety of other law enforcement organizations that primarily deal with training issues.
Have you been a certified police instructor in any states?
Yes, sir.
And
In
can you
Michigan, I'm sorry,
Tell us which states those are.
Michigan, Florida, North Carolina, and Wisconsin.
And have you been a diplomat for the American Board of Law Enforcement Experts?
Yes. Not a diplomat, a diplomate. I've never been accused of being a diplomat.
Diplomate, excuse me, sir.
What the fuck is that? Ask
You've
the
got
question.
on your curriculum vitae that you're a civilian response to active shooter events instructor. Alert is what you called it. What does that mean?
Basically, I went through the instructor training for active shooters to train basically civilians. I went through it with them.
So you train civilians how to be active shooters.
45 to 50 law enforcement personnel.
And have you written articles for various police magazines or university magazines?
Not recently, but in the distant past, yes.
I'm not a diplomat. I'm your diplomate.
And what do you do now?
Up until last August, I had both a private detective agency and a consulting firm. Basically, I closed down the private detective agency after about 31 years.
Even Google thinks I'm
and
spelling it wrong.
primarily do consulting on police-related or police practices, mostly police-related litigation.
And were you retained to look at the investigation?
Oh, for God's sake. A diplomate, a person who holds a diploma, especially a doctor certified as a specialist by a board of examiners. So basically, he's got a diploma. He's got a certificate of achievement from somewhere. Oh, for F's sakes, come on. Be better. Just say, I graduated from this, whatever the hell it was. You got your diploma from.
Of the case it's now styled State of Florida versus Donald Wayne Hartung.
Yes, I was.
And are you being paid for your work?
I am. I'm being paid, appointed by the state and paid by them.
You're paid through the Judicial Administration Commission?
Hopefully, yes.
Okay. But that's who's the state of Florida is going to pay you for your testimony today.
Correct.
And what is your hourly rate?
At the time I took this case on, it was $200 per hour and then $2,000 per day in trial testimony in court or deposition.
Woohoo, he's making $2,000 for sitting there.
For your review of the crime scene, you were provided with copies of the police reports. Is that correct?
Yes.
And other discovery materials, including photographs and that sort of thing.
Correct.
Okay. Now, there was an issue with the trash can that was handled with various bits of evidence in it. Are you familiar with that black trash can?
From the laundry room, yes.
From the crime scene?
Yes.
Okay. Testimony was it was transported to the evidence room where photographs were taken of it as it was empty. Do you recall that?
Yes.
Would there have been a more efficient or a better way to have handled the gathering of the evidence contained in the trash can?
Oh yeah, that harkens back to day one of like the photos. Remember, they were taking pictures inside the garbage can, and he's like, aha, the cigarette butt moved. You moved the evidence. He's like, yeah, while we were moving the garbage can from point A to point B, it moved around a little bit. And oh yeah, we had to move this to get to that. So yeah, now there was better ways they could have sifted through the garbage at the house. All right. And as long as we're stopped, Ike, seeing as I have a diploma of aviation, I demand you call me Diplomate Ike. And Jonathan is working on becoming a diplomate next week.
Certainly.
And can you explain to the jury how that should have been handled?
Rather than take a container, which is subject to shifting and movement and even being tipped over, the best approach would have been having a crime scene tech videotape it
They took pictures.
as you're actually removing each item, and then you can separate them and package them up, identify in what order. That would have been the absolute best way of dealing with that.
Could have been
And would
worse.
that
They
have
could have
been
used
done
red
on
solo
the
cups.
scene?
The best way, yes.
So you wouldn't have to move the trash can at all.
Anytime you move it, you could have a shifting of the objects inside it. So yes, to do it where it, or in very close proximity to where it was discovered.
Now, as far as the thermostats are concerned, how should that be handled to ensure that the temperature in the house was properly verified?
You're talking about the crime scene?
Yes, sir. I'm sorry. The crime scene at the house.
It should have been recorded, particularly when the bodies were present. That would be significant, and as far as assisting the pathologist in determining or attempting to determine the time of death.
Now, there was a situation where Sergeant
I feel like I'm letting chat down. I feel like I'm letting my viewers down. Up to this point, we've had at least something witty to say occasionally about the witnesses and what they're saying. These two, the defense lawyer and this witness, are the most boring people I have ever seen in my entire life. And it's clear that they're grasping at straws. If the big thing they're complaining about is how they took the garbage out of the garbage can. And I will say, and I don't know how many of you agree with me, how many of you disagree with me, but from a legal standpoint, I mean, purely, strictly legal, I don't think that the prosecution proved beyond a reasonable doubt that he did it. No real direct evidence, prison snitch, that's about it. But on a juror level, yeah, he did it. He clearly did it. He did the murdering. So if I was on a jury, I would probably convict him. Say, yeah, they don't really prove it beyond a reasonable doubt, but I know he did it.
Bjornson left his DNA in the kitchen on a screw on a faucet. Are you familiar?
Okay, I spoke too soon. Oh, if I had just let it play for another 30 seconds, we would have got something about him screwing in the kitchen and leaving his DNA there. All right. Phew, saved by the bell. We've achieved normalcy. I sound like Sarah Boone. We've achieved normalcy. We've achieved normalcy. We can begin with the crude jokes because he just said he was screwing in the kitchen and left his DNA.
Attempting to determine the time of death.
Now, there was a situation where Sergeant Bjornson left his DNA in the kitchen on a screw on a faucet. Are you familiar with that?
Correct. He was the supervisor
Yes.
of the crime scene techs.
And what is the issue with that?
It was just completely outside protocol and reckless or careless.
That is the thing. The guy with the left his DNA there was just manipulating the faucet handle without gloves or anything. He just like grabbed it and like turned it on. Ugh. So I mean, that was a stupid thing, but At most, it's going to cover, in worst case scenario, it covers your client's DNA. That would be
Anytime you go into a crime scene, you try not to contaminate it or introduce any foreign objects, such as the sergeant's
an
DNA.
Infinger.
Way you do that is fresh gloves, masks, booties. Sometimes you have full body suits. The paper.
Can you imagine Infinger in the booties? Oh, I thought we weren't going to be able to have fun on this stream. It was just getting too boring. Now, in the space of 2 minutes, it's gotten a little saucy. Went from leaving DNA after screwing in the kitchen, and now we've got possible Infinger in booties. Woohoo!
Pursuits and other types, so that when you were processing it, they call it Locard's
Did you see
exchange
Coxwell
principle.
in
I
booties,
refer
sir?
to it when I teach people about criminal investigation. It's the theory of transfer. Whenever you go into a location, you leave something behind and take something with you. If you're dealing with criminals who are at a crime scene, they leave something behind or they take something with them. The object is to link the two, and then you have evidence of the crime.
Mm-hmm.
So the people who are
Clever bastard.
developing or gathering this want to do everything reasonable and possible to avoid contaminating the scene and leaving something there that that may change the ability to deal with that theory of transfer.
This was a situation where there were 3 bodies, which is an unusual situation.
For most jurisdictions,
You could even call it a 3-body problem. Dun, dun, dun. Oh, I have a dun, dun, dun button. I keep forgetting I have a dun, dun, dun button. You could call it a 3-body problem. Continue.
jurisdictions, I'd say extremely unusual. Correct.
And what would be the proper police procedure for ensuring that you don't miss or lose any evidence?
Well, you secure the scene, you limit who goes in and who goes out. You also, I mean, criminal investigation 101, you establish a crime scene log. Who was in there? Because again, you go back to the theory of transfer.
There's the question. See, that's what the prosecution's relying. The defendant's DNA was on the counter. The defendant's DNA was on the hammer. But so was the victim's. Everybody's DNA was all over the damn house because he's there at least every Tuesday hanging out with the family. That's why I'm saying there's no real direct evidence that he committed these murders. The only one that links him to the murder is the nosy next door neighbor that said, "Oh, I saw him come on Tuesday. Whoa, hey."
Phrasing.
I saw him arrive on Tuesday and then he left. And then he came back on Friday when the cops came. And then the prison snitch going, "Oh yeah, he murdered him because one was out of the will, the other diddled his son, and the other one couldn't be left alive as a witness." That's literally the only real evidence that, and I hesitate to call the prison snitch real evidence, but that's it. So yeah, exactly the point, Crystal Poo. It just sounds weird. We'll just call you Crystal. Adair K. He has gifted 5 Legal Vices memberships. Thank you so much, Adair. That put us a big leap towards the emotional support Potato Pig Doug Cam. Thank you so very much. And if you happen to be Swamp Bear X, Jonathan Irwin, Crystal. I'm just going to call you Crystal. Jim Schuler and Rachel Moe. Make sure you give Adair K a super special thanks for your awesome Legal Vices membership. And we will be having a members only stream coming up sometime this weekend.
So you would want to know everybody who may have been there and what times they were there, or what this, I think, crime scene lasted for like 5 to 7 days. So you'd want to know when they were there and when they left. So if there was a problem, such as the sergeant,
Yeah, I know.
leaving
I didn't have it ready.
DNA evidence behind, you would be able to determine who else may have contaminated the scene if the scene was contaminated. So you want to know everybody. Were the EMS personnel in there? You log them in, you log them out. Fire department personnel who helped open it up if they were different from the EMS, the people who removed the bodies. You need documentation for all of that. And that wasn't done in this case.
Why is it important to know when people leave?
Because they might be
Because
dead.
if the scene was altered in any way, when it may have been altered or what they have done. You could go back and link what was their purpose for being there and make a determination about that.
In this particular case, at the conclusion of the investigation, 2 knives were found. One was in a chair and one was in a couch. What does that indicate to you with these knives not being found from a chair and a couch that were in the residence?
Well, you're talking after the crime scene was released, the chair was being removed from the home. After you have a bloody crime scene, they have different ways of cleaning it up. And oftentimes, if things are blood soaked, you would remove them.
He must be really weak because he can't seem to hold his hands up. He keeps doing this thing with his hand. And look, this was a hoarder house. This house was borderline hoarder. If you recall the videos, finding a knife in the couch, I'm sure if they would have looked, they would have found more than one knife and probably a few pieces of steak somewhere in that couch.
If they can't be utilized again in the future. And so I believe on August 11th, the chair was being removed and a bloody knife fell out from the cushion. On August 12th, they were removing a love seat, and these items were in close proximity to 2 of the bodies. Another knife fell out. Neither knife was recovered. Apparently, they were both inside the cushions, which would indicate to me that it wasn't a very thorough or a thorough search of the most obvious places.
And see, I would question whether someone who is absolutely, because like I said, they're hoarders. The 2 half brothers and the mother were hoarders, for lack of a better term. On the other hand, the defendant, Donald Hartung, is incredibly OCD about the cleanliness and organization of his own home. If you saw his house pictures, I mean, everything was perfectly lined up on the desk, everything in its place. I don't see him sort of being the guy just to chuck a knife under a cushion and walk away, but who knows? Amel, what's up? What? I apologize if I accidentally mispronounce your name. I started rewatching The Sopranos a couple of days ago, and I'm on like episode 2 when he keeps calling the where the hell were they from? Czechoslovakia? Anyway, the other group of gangsters and Emil, he kept calling him Email. So if I accidentally call you Email, please forgive me. Emil, thank you so much. Emil, thank you so much for the $5. Says thanks, JK. Thank you.
For evidence.
Speak.
Just a second.
Yes.
As far as there was testimony that a storage unit that belonged to one of the victims, Richard Thomas Smith, was found but not inventoried or searched.
Hey, Lotus Bloom,
What is in proper police procedure? Should that have been inventoried and searched, even though it was off-site?
Absolutely. I mean, it should have been documented. Photos should have been taken, should have been searched, because you don't know who did what.
Wild and crazy guys.
Evidentiary material in that offsite place that could take you in a whole new path on your investigation.
No. There was testimony that the homicide investigator in charge said he looked at some video of the people, he looked at video to see if anybody entered the storage unit after the fact, but that it was open. Apparently he looked in, decided there was nothing that he wanted to review and left it, didn't inventory it or search it. Is that still improper procedure?
You have a whodunit situation, absolutely. Even if you have a theory, you should explore all potential avenues.
All right, so let's summarize what the defense is complaining about here. They're complaining that by improperly removing evidence from the garbage can, they may have covered up some of the defendant's evidence of criminal activity. And because they didn't do a thorough search, they didn't find the murder weapons for a while. These mistakes seem to be helpful to your client. I mean, helpful. I mean, yeah, helpful to his client, but he's complaining about it. So, it's kind of weird. It's kind of weird. He's complaining about doing things that help his client. Dang it, you should have got that evidence out of the garbage can a little more carefully. Dang it, you should have examined the couch on site.
Because you don't know if you develop additional information, it may lead you in a different direction. And the purpose of an investigation is to determine the truth about what happened. It's not to just look at evidence that supports your initial theory.
Now, we talked about the thermostats possibly being changed, possibly not being changed. Would you think that fingerprints should be taken on those thermostats to determine if anybody had changed the temperature from what it normally would have been in the house?
That could be an example of police or law enforcement personnel contaminating the scene. If you do that, if you change anything, it should be documented. But yeah, you can, I mean, if there was documentation that when the police entered, it was X degree and now it's Y degree, and you could have an explanation for why it was oppressively hot in there.
Yes, this is the case with the pill popper CSI.
Odors. We opened the doors.
You're so kind and caring.
We turned on the air as high as it could be. Now, obviously, you want to limit the amount of potential contamination of the scene to get critical evidence before you alter anything. But if law enforcement,
because there was plenty of crumbs, I'm sure,
the thermostat to provide a better working environment, it should have been documented. And if it wasn't documented, then certainly if there's an indication that it might have been changed, that should have been processed for fingerprints and or DNA.
Now, Mr. Hartung was a suspect and a firearm was used to shoot Richard Thomas Smith. Although the search of Mr. Hartung's home occurred 3 days after it is believed that the Smiths were murdered, would it still have been reasonable to take his shirts to check them for gunshot residue or GSR?
Possibly. You're looking for the presence of barium and antimony, two things that are in two chemicals it certainly wouldn't have hurt to make that attempt. Now, those things could be on clothing, they could be on an individual's hands, but as you wear, rub your hands, wash your hands, it gets removed. But that item on clothing, if you had discharged a firearm and it was in close proximity to your clothing, that
Just ask
shooter was
Monica
wearing at
Lewinsky.
that
You
time,
discharge onto
then
clothing
there's
and the
a
DNA
potential
stays
that-
there for a
that-
while.
That could have possibly been detected.
The residue stays there.
And even though it was several days later, if the shirts had been washed, they would have lost the gunshot residue, correct?
Yes.
But
He's asking these questions in such a weird way. It's like, these guys suck because they sort of exonerate my client. That's weird. I hope I'm not articulating this position very well. But it's like he's complaining about things and what a crappy job they're doing with their investigation because they're exonerating his client. When really these questions should be asked of this is his own witness, so whatever. But I don't recall him asking the actual investigators, did you find any gunshot residue? It's just, this is odd, but he's doing what he can with what he's got. He doesn't have a lot to work with, really. Jonathan Irwin, $2. Was it on Dobby's sock? Oh no.
if they hadn't been washed, it may still be there.
Correct.
What? He
No.
just come on, don't do this. He literally just said if my client hadn't have washed his clothes, would the gunshot residue still be there? All right, that's what you want to say. See, that's what I mean by these are weird questions. They're being worded in a very weird way. He's implying that because his client washed his clothes, the gunshot residue was washed away. He's not saying that specifically, but that's what he's getting. It's weird. Okay, Strawberry, I will give you your toy. Hang on.
The last thing I want to talk to you about is Investigator Infinger, who was the lead homicide investigator on this case, indicated that at about 12:30 he arrived at the crime scene, and at 1:30 he this is PM, he had Mr. Hartung in an interview room interviewing him, and he has testified that he determined by 1:30, within an hour of him arriving at the crime scene, Mr. Hartung was the person who committed the murders, and he did not have anyone else as a suspect, nor did he investigate anyone else. Do you see any issue?
My dog is so dumb. Dogs are just stupid. She literally has this toy this far in front of her face. Like literally this far in front of her face. And she would rather bark and have me come across the room to pick it up and give it to her than to just lean her stupid neck forward and get it herself.
Issues with that?
It's very problematic. Once you make a preliminary opinion based on a hunch or an instinct, and you don't look at any other possibilities. For example, of the three victims, one was killed or at least attacked in a different manner.
How do you know?
One had a position with Department of Homeland Security. Now, was he the target and these others a cover-up? We don't know. But once a detective develops a theory and only considers information which supports his or her theory.
I would like the prosecution to get up for their cross-examination. Just look at him and go, huh? No further questions.
Then you are either ignoring or refusing to accept other possibilities. So at least in the initial stages, okay, you could like him as a potential suspect, But to exclude all other considerations at that point is the antithesis of a sound, objective criminal
Well,
investigation.
how do you know
The
they
purpose of the
excluded all other
investigation
possible
is to determine the truth of what
suspects?
happened, not what this detective thinks may have happened, particularly before the whole scene's processed and you gather all the information.
Although, as many police officers do, there is a hunch as to who may have done this or a belief that someone may have done it, do you still need to attempt to gather information to eliminate any other people?
Absolutely. Otherwise, you fall into that trap. And
It's
you
a
know,
trap.
There's a potential that you have the wrong person. And because that detective liked it, that person
he
is a
liked
suspect.
it.
That's all he did, or that's all he caused to do, was to focus on that individual and not consider other possibilities.
Individual.
Would that be gathering evidence to support your theory?
That's the problem when you do that. Correct. You only gather or consider the evidence that supports your theory and ignore anything that may dispute it or isn't consistent with it.
Is determining who the murderer is within an hour of arriving on the crime scene without the benefit of having the crime scene fully processed bad police work?
In my opinion, yes. I mean, if you have a guy there and he's got a knife in one hand and a gun in the other, and he's saying, I did it. Okay.
Well, that would certainly be pretty fucking convenient, wouldn't it? But guess what didn't happen? Jill Ams with the 5 Aussie dollaros. Thank you so much for the super chat. Ha! Strawberry's not stupid. Just proves she has you trained. Yeah, she just knows that I would rather not hear her go than yeah, yeah, she's got me trained. This is weird.
Then you could consider him as your primary suspect. But until you get additional information and you explore everything that the scene has to offer and collect all the information you possibly can, how could you even possibly consider that? I mean, you can think he's a possible suspect, but to start at that point and eliminate all others, I'm sorry, that's
How do you know they did that?
not how detectives are trained. It's not how they're taught, and it's an antithesis of good investigative work.
I don't have anything for
What the hell was that?
Myers.
All right, is Sarah Palin going to do it? Nope.
Good afternoon, Mr. Waller.
Good afternoon.
Looking through your CV, most of your, I guess, police work was more administrative kind of later in your career?
That's a mix of, I mean, I've served in a variety of capacities. Toward the end of my career, yes, I was police chief.
Right. And that was 1987?
Oh, God. Yeah. All right.
That's when I left Ripon, correct. And then I was an interim chief in 1989 for the campus police.
So, like, the last time he was actually a police officer was like 32 years before the murder. Okay. That's your expert, is it? All right. Oops.
For about 5 or 6 months.
When you were talking about you did some work in Miami as a police officer?
Yes, sir.
When was that?
71 through 76.
Good God. This guy was doing police work when old ass me was 2 years old. Good Lord.
When you were working in Miami as a police officer on the street, and I'm saying that like on the street, doing the actual day in and day out work, did you process crime scenes?
Yes.
Okay. What types of crime scenes?
Well, we pretty much did. I was a detective and then a detective sergeant with the South Miami Police Department. We processed all the general crimes, larcenies, like auto theft, burglaries, that sort of thing. If we were working a homicide or a sexual assault, we brought in the county's crime scene units.
Okay, so you didn't process any homicide scenes.
I investigated homicides. I brought in the county homicide units, usually multiple units, to process that. It was a more...
Yes, sir. My question was, did you actually do the processing of a
No.
homicide? No. Did you process a triple homicide in a hoarder's house?
No.
All right. He's serving this expert up for dinner. It ain't going well for the expert.
Now, you indicated that you are being paid by the state of Florida, but you were hired by the defense, weren't you?
He is the attorney. Mr. Griffith is the one that contacted me, and my understanding is I was appointed by the court. Yes.
And you're being paid $200 an hour?
Hopefully.
And how many hours have you put in?
Initially less than 20, and that was before the first trial was pushed back or pushed till now, and probably another 12.
So about 32 hours total, plus
Roughly.
plus your testimony.
Yes.
Now, you indicated that, and my last question.
What, 7,000, 8,000? I don't know.
When was the last time you testified in Florida in a criminal case?
Well, Cain was accused of killing Abel.
Probably, well, 1977, I believe, they brought me back for a case in Miami, a robbery.
The last time he testified in a criminal case in Florida was 50 years ago. It was 47 years ago was the last time he testified in a criminal case in a Florida court. You get what you pay for, and you didn't pay nothing for this dude. Oh, no. Whew. Wow.
Trial.
Do you know when DNA was first used by law enforcement?
Yes.
When was that? When was that?
Initially, it was in the early 90s. And then as it became more refined and developed,
Yeah.
it was used more frequently. And as the testing process proliferated and you had more labs doing it, and it became less expensive, you had more and more use of it.
It was actually first used in 1986, but it didn't become widespread really until the mid-90s. Start.
And you indicated earlier that you had two jobs. One is on a consultant firm and the other is a private detective firm that's now closed.
Well, they were combined. I did both things.
Okay. And you've been doing the consulting firm for how long?
I opened my own shop in 1992, I believe.
Is that about 28 years?
Yes, sir. I started the consulting. My very first case was in 1988. So, and that
36 years ago. So that would
You
be
indicated
32 years before
trash
the
can
trial.
should have been processed on scene.
I said that would have been the best to ensure you could have somebody videotape it, and as you remove each item and account for any shifting and the layering and that sort of thing. That would have been the absolute best.
Is it not best to process evidence, especially DNA evidence, in a sterile environment?
Yes. Yes.
Well,
yes.
you have to remove it at some point, and obviously if it's in a garbage can, it's not in a sterile environment. So you do the best you can. And the very best option would have been video and do it on site and document each item as it's being removed.
If a crime scene tech has on the latex gloves and turns down the thermostat, they're not going to leave a fingerprint. Is that accurate?
Assuming they're wearing gloves, it would not leave a fingerprint and probably not leave DNA.
And if you indicated that it should be recorded when they enter, have you seen the photographs in the case?
I have.
Did you see a photograph of the thermostat?
I did.
So it's documented.
No, I didn't see when it was taken or by whom and what time, what day.
Well,
They were there.
well, whose fault is that? Are you? He's like, aha, I didn't see when it was. So basically, you didn't ask your own person who you're essentially working for. You didn't ask the defense to provide you with the metadata. Whose fucking fault is that, Mr. Expert? I don't know when it was taken. You didn't bother to ask or find out or ask for the date. Do you even know there's metadata? Do you even know what a phone is, dude? Oh
5 to 7 days. So I would want to know what it was like when they first went in and a documentation of that.
And you indicated that they should have kept a crime scene log, correct?
That's standard procedure.
Okay. Did you see a crime scene log in this case?
No, I did not. I saw references in different parts of the reports about who may have been there. Some people were excluded, some people were included, but it didn't list the times they were at the scene and didn't leave when they arrived and when they left.
You knew that ECSO was out there, Escambia County Sheriff's Office, I'm sorry,
Yes,
Florida Department of Law Enforcement,
yes,
Department of Homeland Security,
yes,
Medical Examiner's Office,
yes.
State Attorney's Office,
An investigator, yes.
EMS.
And for those of you that are listening for the first time going, huh? Homeland Security was there. What was Homeland Security doing there? One of the half brothers who was murdered was an IT specialist for Homeland Security. So Homeland Security came out there to do their own investigation. That's why Homeland Security was there. If you're just going, huh?
Yes,
Body removal.
yes,
And you were able to note that they had all entered the scene, right?
I was aware that they had, yes. Didn't know when and didn't know their names, which is something that you would want in an investigation.
Were you provided the CAD reports in this case?
So many questions.
I don't recall.
Do you know what a
Can you
CAD
tell the
report
jury what a
is?
CAD report is?
Usually it's a printout, computer-aided dispatch. So it's documentation that the dispatchers provide to law enforcement in the field.
And does that include the date and time that they go out on the calls?
It may or may not, and it may not include all personnel. But it's not a substitute for a crime scene log.
Gunshot residue, it can be found on your hand, on clothes, or on anything that's within a close proximity of a fired gun. Is that accurate?
Yes, usually within like a foot and a half or so.
It can be found on somebody who did not fire the gun.
You may have some of that, like an agriculture worker may have those traces if they've been handling fertilizer. Yes.
If we were in a close proximity and I fire a gun, could it get on you?
Yes.
You kind of indicated it with Mr. Griffith, but gunshot residue can go away. It can be washed off, rubbed off, correct?
Rubbed out.
Okay. And so the timing of when you collect that is important, is it not?
And depends on what occurred in between.
Oh my God! How
In
much
cases
longer
where
does this guy
family members
have?
are killed, is it not common
Ooh,
that
only 2
a
minutes.
family
Good.
member is a suspect?
It's not uncommon. Yes.
And with Mr. Hartung being on scene there on the 31st, wouldn't you agree that he should have been interviewed?
Oh, absolutely.
You're aware that Mr. Hartung was not arrested for 3 months.
Yes. I mean, approximately. I'd have to look up the specific dates, but I know it was an extended time period.
Mr. Waller, have you ever made a mistake?
Sure.
Did you write a report in this case?
No,
Why not?
was not asked to.
Thank you.
Please put the camera on somebody else so I can stop pushing this button. Now, there we go. Diabetes.
Although it's been a while since you've testified in state court in Florida, you've testified in other courts throughout the United States, haven't you, since then?
Oh, sure. I testified last Thursday in southern Indiana.
Do you also testify in federal court?
Yes, sir. Wednesday in Chicago, I will be testifying in federal court.
Now, on CAD reports, which is what Mr. Myers referred you to, in a CAD report, that wouldn't necessarily indicate when the Department of Homeland Security investigators entered and left the residence, would it?
Not unless somebody reported
Stop hitting the
investigator
table, you
so-and-so
dick.
or agent so-and-so from Homeland Security is here. They've entered the scene and then acknowledged that when they left it, and then the dispatcher recorded it. But that generally does not
You
happen.
didn't see any indication of that in any of the discovery materials you were provided.
No, sir.
And the CAD reports don't necessarily say when any of the medical examiners people go in and out.
Correct.
They may keep their own log, but that doesn't go into a master log, does it?
No.
Now, as Mr. Myers said, family members are usually suspects, but that doesn't make them the only suspect, does it?
Correct.
And you still need to develop other suspects, even if you have family members, isn't that right?
Right. I mean, you don't want to close your mind or narrow your outlook right at the start. You want to keep it broad-based, and as you develop information, an individual suspect or suspects may develop, but that's what you're supposed to do. That's what you're trained to do.
And just because you have a family member, that doesn't mean they're guilty.
Correct.
I don't have anything further.
Whew. All right. That was thrilling. Vinny. All right. Let's get this set up here. This is lead investigator. Mr. Infinger is being recalled. We're recalling Infinger. Lead investigator, Matt Infinger. So the defense is calling Mr. Infinger. Dun dun dun. All right.
Investigate.
No. 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 Let's refresh and see if it works.
Investigator Infinger, please state your reason. state your full name
There
for
we
the
go.
jury and spell your last name for the court reporter?
Matt Infinger, Infinger.
Hey, we've got closed captions for Infinger. So now we can watch Infinger. Ooh.
And you're the same admin figure that previously testified as the lead homicide investor in this case. Is that
Yes.
correct?
Yes.
Now, during the course of this case, the state has introduced a will that was prepared by Mr. Roddenberry Jr. and was executed by Von Seal Smith. Are you aware of that will?
Yes.
Where did you find that will?
In the holodeck.
I did not. The family found it.
And you're not talking about Mr. Hartung.
No, it was some of the family from Mobile, Wanda Hammock, and I don't recall the other two names.
Okay. Did they bring that will to you?
No, I believe they took it to the attorney. They told me about it, and I contacted the attorney.
Okay. So it was already opened at the time you received it.
Yes.
Infinger, spit on that
That's all the
thing.
questions I have here.
The hell was that?
He's free to leave, Your Honor.
Okay.
Good morning. Would you state your name, please, and spell your last name?
Christine Rollins, Rollins.
All right. For what it's worth,
Miss Rollins.
we've got to copy and paste Christine Rollins. She's former crime scene technician Christine Rollins. All right. Embiggen. Stop
when
it.
you went to the scene on July 31st of 2015, did you walk back to the room that was Von Seal's closet?
I went back to her room. Yes, ma'am. I didn't go in her closet.
Okay, you photographed the entrance to the closet?
All right. Now, for those of you that didn't see her original testimony, this bitch defense lawyer, she was unbelievably horrific to this woman. Sad case here. She was the crime scene technician that processed the crime scene. And not too long after this, she developed a drug habit, and she had stolen some of the evidence from the was it the evidence locker, or did she take some from the first aid stuff? But she basically took some drugs that didn't belong to her that were at the station, and consumed them, and she got caught, and she lost her job. She has a criminal record now. She felt very, very bad about it. She was crying on the stand, and she was like, yeah, I was in a dark place, and she was very, very apologetic. And this bitch, this defense lawyer, she sat there and just crucified her about being a degenerate, untrustworthy druggie for like an hour on the stand. And again, like made her cry and stuff. It was really, really terrible and off-putting. I mean, she wasn't cross-examining her. She was just humiliating her. It was awful. It was really bad.
Yes, ma'am.
But you didn't actually walk in there?
No, ma'am.
When you photographed the entrance to the closet, did you see a safe anywhere?
No, ma'am.
Also, when you were at the scene on that same day, did you turn over Richard's body?
No, ma'am, I did not.
Did you see who did?
It would probably be the medical examiner's office people.
But that's just speculation on your part.
I don't normally touch the bodies.
Okay. There were over 400 pieces of evidence that were collected. Is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you change gloves after you handled each single piece of evidence?
No, ma'am.
May I approach the witness, Your Honor?
Yes, ma'am.
I'm showing you what has been entered as Defendant's Exhibit 21. Is this the photograph you took?
I'm not sure.
This is a photograph that's in the house, is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. At the scene?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and you're not sure if you took it or if someone else took it?
No, I'm not sure.
Did you fingerprint that thermostat?
No, ma'am.
Did you swab it for DNA?
No, ma'am.
Do you know who
Did you snort
turned
drugs
down
off
the
of it?
temperature on that thermostat?
No, ma'am.
May I approach the witness, Your Honor?
Yes.
I'm showing you what was entered as State's Exhibit 18.
Oh, okay.
Is this a photograph that you took?
Yes, ma'am.
In this photograph, this is looking in the back door of the Smith home from the back porch. Is that right?
I think it was the front door.
Okay. So if it's looking in the front door, would you agree that the door itself is completely open?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And what about the storm door?
Is it just me, or does this defense lawyer sound like Daniel Striped Tiger from Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood? she just sounds like Daniel Striped Tiger.
Or is it in a position where it's propped open?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you have any idea how long it was propped open?
No, ma'am.
And the evidence room at the sheriff's office, is that a sterile environment?
All the counters are wiped down before and after we clean, or before and after we process evidence.
But is it actually a sterile environment?
No, ma'am.
Okay, that's all my questions.
Mr. Rollins, just a couple questions. Do you take overall photographs before the medical examiner gets there?
Yes, sir.
Were the bodies moved before the medical examiner's investigators got there?
No, sir.
Did you have any contact with Donald Hartung?
No, sir.
Ever seen him before at the scene?
No, sir.
Touch him?
No, sir.
I'm going to show you states 413. You recognize 413?
Yes, sir.
And where is that located?
It's in the den area.
Is that in the doorway of the den area?
Yes, sir.
And what's on the other side of the doorway?
Liz, what's up, paralegal
The
Liz?
hallway that leads to the back door.
Now, the blue things on, looks like shoes.
Yes, sir.
Can you tell the jury what those are?
They're booties. They're shoe covers that you wear when you come into a crime scene. You change them every time you go outside and you come back inside.
And all the crime scene techs that were there that day, did they use those booties?
Yes, sir, they did.
And is that an accurate copy of,
Infinger used those
that
booties.
photograph and those booties?
Yes, sir.
I'd like to move in 413. No objection. So noted. Now, you testified that you did not change your gloves every time you touched a piece of evidence, right?
Correct.
If you touch something with obvious bodily fluids, do you change your gloves
Yes, sir.
every time?
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you, ma'am. Those are my questions.
No questions.
All right, thank you. Take it down.
All right, the next witness. Who is our next witness? Forensic pathologist Jonathan Arden. Forensic pathologist Jonathan Arden is going to be testifying for a very long time. Why, I don't know. He's gonna take us up to the end of the show, I guess, for today. Yeah. Oof, all right, I guess it's time for our midstream grift. Hey, 192 people watching this trial. Sorry, this is not an entertaining day. This is kind of a letdown. It's like boring and dull, but hey, we'll get through it. We've still got another 40 minutes. And during that 40 minutes, preferably right now, please do me a favor. Hit that like button, hit the subscribe button if you already have. Reminder, just seriously, just glance down there and check and make sure you're still subscribed. And take our poll. Let's look at the worst like and subscribe poll I have ever put on this channel. What's the problem with Dennis? Should have been Donald Hartung, male witch. 13% of you said this is a really stupid poll. 22% of you said keeps using cauldron for cappuccino. 28% said has a broom, didn't read the instructions. And 38% of you said, thank God this is the last option. Sorry about the poll. It was bad. All right, that catches us up on everything we have to do for our midstream grift. Just remind you, and not that I care too much, but we're about it looks like we're about 55 away from Doggo Cam.
If you would, sir, please state your full name for the court and spell your last name for the court reporter.
Oh, this guy.
I'm Dr. Jonathan Arden. Last name is Arden.
Dr. Arden,
where have we seen this guy?
What is your profession?
I'm a physician, and in particular, I am a forensic pathologist.
I've seen this guy.
What does it mean to be a forensic pathologist?
Well, first of all, pathology in general is the medical specialty that studies the changes in the form or the function of the human body. And by changes, I'm talking about the effects of diseases or injuries. So if you take that general field, and then it is initially divided into two major pieces, one of which is anatomic pathology, which is the study of the changes of the anatomy, meaning the structures. And that includes both what you can see with the naked eye and what you can look at under the microscope. Then finally, if you take the broad background of general medicine and anatomic pathology, and then you primarily apply it to the process of investigation and certification of death, particular types of deaths, in particular deaths that occur by injuries. So any death where any injury causes the death or plays a role in causing a death, and also deaths that occur suddenly and unexpectedly, such as people who die in public or without medical care. It's that process of basically figuring out how and why those kinds of people die that is forensic pathology.
And does that include people that die as a result of criminal activity?
Yes, sir.
What qualifies you to be a forensic pathologist?
Lots of school.
In terms of my education and training and experience, begin with after I graduated from college, I then attended and graduated from the University of Michigan Medical School, receiving my MD or Doctor of Medicine in 1980. I then served in two
Jonathan
medical
Irwin
specialty training programs.
with the $2. At least the pathologist spells his name right.
In anatomic pathology, and that was at the New York University Medical Center in New York City. I then served one additional year of training in forensic pathology at the Office of the Chief Medical Examiner for the state of Maryland.
Thank you, Jonathan. Appreciate that.
Subsequent to my education and training, I've become board certified by the American Board of Pathology in 1985.
I hate
in
these
both
resume
anatomic
readings.
and forensic pathology. I then embarked on a career as a forensic pathologist. I spent a total of
He's a
20
diplomate.
years in full-time government service as a medical examiner. I worked in 4 different offices, including 9 years for the city of New York, where I rose through several titles and finished there as the first deputy chief medical examiner, the second in command to that system. I then spent about 5.5 years as the chief medical examiner for the city of Washington, D.C. At the completion of that period, which was, as I said, about 20 years of government service, I primarily went out and started a private consulting
Okay, you're
practice
smart. We
in
get it.
forensic
Let's move on.
Pathology and medicine, type of work that brings me here today. Overlapping with that, I spent about 18 months in a part-time community-based medical examiner position in Northern Virginia.
He's a hippie. He lived in a dirty commune.
for the past, where we're coming up to almost 12 years now.
He did
I have
Chandler
held a
Levy's
part-time-
autopsy?
I continue to hold a part-time position as a forensic pathologist with the Office of the Chief Medical Examiner for the state of West Virginia. And in that latter part-time position, I do the usual functions of a medical examiner, including performing autopsies, writing reports, being available for court. But I only do that as a part-time activity, and the rest of my time being my consulting practice, work that brings me here today. In addition to those qualifications, I'm currently licensed to practice medicine in 4 states. In terms of professional activities, I've been a member and active in the National Association of Medical Examiners for over 30 years now. I've served on the board of directors and the executive committee, and last year I was president of the National Association of Medical Examiners, and so this year I'm the chairman of the board.
And what states are you licensed to practice medicine in?
I have active
Little miss. See, there you go. Read carefully. I didn't say he made cappuccino in a cauldron. I said he used the cauldron for cappuccino. You could make the cappuccino and put it in the cauldron to drink. That's what I meant. He's using the cauldron for cappuccino. Not making it in the cauldron, drinking from the cauldron. Sadly, that's the most interesting thing we've talked about in the last hour and 27 minutes.
Licenses to practice in Virginia, Maryland, and West Virginia.
Thanks, little miss.
It's called an inactive license in the state of New York.
Have you
don't worry about it,
testified as
Corn
an
Pope.
expert
Don't go
witness in
back.
court in the past?
Don't go back. Just
On numerous occasions, yes, sir.
Have you testified in Florida in the past?
Yes, sir.
Now, you indicated that you were a board-certified forensic pathologist. What does it mean to be a board-certified forensic pathologist?
Each of the medical specialties in this country has a governing board. So for me, that's the American Board of Pathology. Each of these boards puts together standards for education and training. And if you can demonstrate that you fulfill those standards of education and training and that you hold an active medical license, and if you fill out the application and pay them a healthy fee, they permit you to sit for examinations in your specialty and subspecialty fields. And of course, assuming you pass those examinations, you have demonstrated your level of accomplishment in each of those fields, and then they certify you, in my case, both in anatomic pathology and in forensic pathology.
So you're a double board certified pathologist.
I guess you really technically say I'm board certified in a specialty and a subspecialty, but yes, it's two boards.
Now, as far as being a board certified forensic pathologist, how many of them are there in the United States?
Not many. There's on the order of 400 to 500 board certified forensic pathologists in the country, not all of whom practice full time.
Now,
dude, move on.
I retained you to assist me in the case of State of Florida versus Donald Wayne Hartung. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And when did you begin working on this case?
Mid to late November of 2018.
And how are you being paid?
I'm being paid by the state of Florida.
Are you being paid through the Judicial Administration Commission?
Yes, sir.
Have you been paid anything?
They're the ones that are paying for Sarah Boone's people as well. The JAC. They're the ones that approve the money for Sarah Boone's experts. Sarah, see if you can get this guy. Sarah, if you're watching, see if you can get this guy. He might be able to help you.
To date?
No, sir. Apparently, we only get to submit bills at the end.
And do you know what your hourly rate is?
Yes, sir.
What is that?
$400 an hour.
Woo!
And how many hours do you have in so far?
I'm just about 20 hours total at this point before today.
8 G's, sweet.
What information or materials have you reviewed to prepare for your testimony today?
Most importantly, I had both the autopsy report the report of investigation by the medical examiner and the toxicology report for each of the three decedents, being John, Richard, and Von Seal Smith. I also had some photographs of the scene, and at some point I received some of the autopsy photographs. I also had some interviews and some police reports and the like.
You mean interviews? You were given copies of the interviews?
Yes, sir. And ultimately transcripts of some depositions as well.
And do you feel qualified based upon the photographs, the interviews, the crime scene photographs, the medical examiner's report, the autopsy report, and the interviews to discuss this case today?
I do.
What was the first thing that came to your attention in reviewing this case?
Well, I guess several things. I know you're asking the first thing, but several things struck me initially. It's an unusual circumstance to have three decedents in one event or location. Triple homicides are not common events. So that struck me initially.
It also struck the victims with a hammer.
Circumstances in which the decedents were discovered at the house with the clothing on top of them and so on was of note to me. The nature of the injuries of each of them was something that was notable to me from early on in the process. And then also I had thoughts and concerns about the postmortem interval, the timing of death.
All right. In reviewing the autopsy notes of the pathologist.
Listen to all that coughing going on in the courtroom. Again, this was January 2020. I'm still saying that you're hearing early COVID coughing going on. That's what I'm saying that because now there's more people coughing in the courtroom than there was in previous days.
To handle this case, can you tell me how long each autopsy took?
I cannot tell you how long each one took. Each of the autopsy reports had a starting time listed, and the three of them were actually very closely spaced in time as far as what she said was the starting time. One was, I think, 10:02, one was 10:07, and I believe one was 10:12. So within a 10-minute period, she listed all three of them as having started. There were no end times listed on any of them. So it tells me that she had three autopsies going simultaneously, and I don't know if we have a way to track how long each one took.
Is that unusual to have three autopsies going at one time?
It is unusual. It's not unheard of, but it's unusual. And of course, I think it's much more difficult to keep your attention on what you're doing on one when you're trying to track all three.
Now, there has been testimony that a dog was
when they're
walking
convicted
the house, and it's been posited that the Smiths were murdered on Tuesday, the 28th of July, and the bodies were not discovered until Friday, the 30th of July, 31st of July, excuse me. Did you see anything odd about having a dog locked in the house with these three people for that period of time?
Yes, sir.
And can you explain that to the jury?
Yes. When a person dies in an enclosed environment like a
smells
house,
bad.
House pets, commonly cats and dogs, when they get to the point where they don't have any other food source, they've exhausted whatever there is, they will then feed on the dead body. That's a very common phenomenon. And so the idea that there were three dead people in this house over a period of days, purportedly, and the dog was there and had not fed on any of the people, I found unusual.
Well, they were buried under piles of
Have
clothing.
you
The dogs couldn't
done
get to them.
autopsies where animals have actually fed on the deceased?
Yes, sir.
Nom.
And is that part of the medical literature that sort of thing happens?
Yes, it is in the literature and the experience in forensic pathology.
Now, next thing I want to talk to you about are what are called, I think, bot flies. Is that
butt flies?
Can you tell the jury about that?
Bottle flies.
Well, there are different species
flies.
of insects, and most commonly we deal with flies that will be attracted to dead bodies. So if you have a dead body in a place that is accessible to the flies, they are attracted to it. They will lay eggs on various parts of the body. And then if there's enough time, the eggs will go through their developmental cycles, which includes making larvae of the flies, which we know as maggots. Those things will feed on the dead body tissue. And again, if there's sufficient time, will go through their entire cycle such that eventually they'll produce a new generation of flies.
Do you know how long it takes for the fly eggs to turn into the maggots?
It's usually a period of days. Different species are slightly different in timing, but you can go through an entire generation of flies in warm temperature in roughly a week or so. So several days out, you should have maggots.
Now, I know the bodies recovered. I think there were 19 bags of clothes found on Mrs. Smith, 4 on John, and 2 on Richard. I may have that backwards, but that's where we are.
LV Cowboy says, Legal Vices, did you see Nick Starro got a really nice Miller hat when he landed in Texas? Why, yes, I convinced him to go there. I paid for most of the hat, and he got one that's pretty much exactly like my winter hat. So, yeah, I did know that. I was the reason he got it.
Would those bags of clothing prevent flies from reaching?
He's a good Padawan.
Bodies?
Well, they certainly would provide some interference. Whether they would definitively prevent all flies from getting there 100%, I can't say. It would likely interfere with the process, though.
Would you expect to have found some fly larvae on these bodies if the Smiths were killed on the 28th and they were not discovered until the 31st?
Yes, that would be likely.
And would that be something that a pathologist would make note of?
Yes, sir.
And why would they make note of that?
Well, a forensic pathologist normally makes note of the postmortem condition of the body. That ranges from the general appearance of the body to specific postmortem changes that indicate both the condition of the body and sometimes assist in trying to make estimates of how long that person has been dead. So we look for the classic postmortem changes like stiffening of the muscles, which is rigor mortis, settling of the blood, which is livor mortis, cooling of the body, and any other postmortem breakdown or effects on the body, which includes, if you go far enough out in time, decomposition, and also includes what you've been inquiring about, namely if there's any insect or any other animal activity that's been subjected or the body's been subjected to.
Now, in this particular case,
you're kind of blurry.
It has been posited that the bodies were killed on the 28th of July because on the 29th of July, John Smith missed
I'm not
doctor's
blurry. I'm
appointment.
crystal clear.
Von Seal Smith's medication was not taken.
Wipe your phone
until
off.
Was not taken for the evening of the 28th of July, and some of the mail was not brought in. You're aware of that?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Those are all human factors, correct?
Yes, sir.
Now, are there medical factors that would contradict that theory?
In this instance, yes, sir.
Okay. Oh, also, Mr. Richard Smith's telephone was not used from the 28th through the time the bodies were found. That's another human factor, is it not?
Yes, sir.
Let's talk about the medical or scientific factors as to why that may not be the correct time of death. Can you tell us about that?
Well, again, the human factors that you've summarized are indeed the type of evidence that forensic pathologists do collect and do take note of. The medical or scientific factors, to me, are even more important in this case. The types of medical factors that I'm referring to are precisely the types of postmortem changes that I just briefly summarized in the immediately prior answer. So forensic pathologists look for the postmortem condition of the body. Is the body in rigor mortis or not? Because rigor mortis is a process where the stiffening of the muscles starts at some point after death. It reaches a maximum, it holds there for a while, then it recedes and eventually goes away completely. And that process has a fairly well-defined time frame, although it's a chemical reaction, so it's dependent on temperature. But that's the process of coming on, maximum, hold, go away. So that sequence is important for me when I'm looking at trying to get a reasonable estimate of how long this person's been dead. Another one of the postmortem changes that I mentioned earlier is called livor mortis or lividity. And that's when the blood settles in the body after death because there's no longer any heartbeat or circulation. So gravity takes over, the blood settles, the areas that are down relative to gravity get engorged and usually get pink or purple. And after some time, the blood in those blood vessels that has settled congeals as a postmortem phenomenon. And then that lividity, the discoloration on that side of the skin is fixed in place. That's important at looking at positioning and identifying death. It is much less helpful in terms of trying to figure out estimate of timing of death. So I would be looking at those things, in particular, the rigor mortis. And the other thing that I mentioned earlier that's also very useful in the relatively earlier time period after death is body temperature. If you have the luxury of a measured body temperature of the body at the scene and the ambient temperature of the scene, you can employ those to make some reasonable estimates as to the time frame of the cooling of that body. And that can also help you to figure out the timing. And again, the other factors that we've already touched on that may not be necessarily as precise, but might be something you would still want to look at include things like insect activity, animal activity. Eventually, again, if you go a little farther out in time, decomposition of the body beginning.
Could you make this sound a little more boring, please?
Try to get an estimate of the postmortem interval.
Let me interrupt you for a moment. It has been discussed that both Richard Thomas and Smith and Von Seal Smith suffered from diabetes. Does this make a difference in making a determination as to a time of death?
I'm aware that diabetes was a diagnosis from the history for them. Diabetes. And the answer really is maybe, but probably not. So simply having diabetes by itself is not likely to make a big difference in the progression of those postmortem changes that I described. So the estimation of time of death, or again, I keep using purposely the word estimation. Remember, we're not determining a time of death like to the minute or the hour. That's not possible. But by and large, the process of estimating how long the person has been dead likely will not be affected by diabetes, except for one factor. If the person is diabetic and the blood sugar is out of control.
Wow, people, hang on 15 more minutes. That's all I'm going to ask of you. This This guy's gonna put us in our graves ourselves.
So the blood sugar is very high at the time of death. Then the extra sugar in the blood
is delicious.
Serves as a source.
They've only showed the defendant like twice. We haven't got any of our good sound effects. They're purposely doing this to us. They know what we're doing.
Of
from
nutrition,
the past,
if you will, for the bacteria that are already inside your body. So you may get some acceleration of the decompositional process if the person is diabetic and has a very high blood sugar at the time of death. That's a possibility.
Was there an indication that either Von Seal Smith or Richard Smith had that extraordinarily high concentration of sugar in their blood?
There's no way, based on the evidence that we have, that we can determine that. The only way that you might be able to assess that postmortem is through measuring the sugar in the fluid that's inside the eye, and that wasn't done here.
Okay,
that's not even always
that's a weird piece
reliable
of information
because the elevated sugar in the eye fluid doesn't stay that way forever postmortem. So there is that's the only way that I'm aware of that might have been a way to address that, but to my knowledge, that wasn't done.
How about Benadryl? There's some indication that both Von Seal Smith and John Smith had some Benadryl, I think.
This guy's testimony
John had
is
in his
Benadryl.
bile, and Von Seal had it in her liver.
Correct.
Or gallbladder.
Her liver tissue.
Okay. Can you address that?
Yes, the medication diphenhydramine, which we commonly known by its trade name of Benadryl, was detected chemically in the liver tissue of Von Seal Smith and in the bile, which is the fluid that's
How
produced
in the
by
world
liver
is this
John Smith.
impeaching any
Now,
of the
the
prosecution's
presence,
witness,
first of all,
or
in
making
one
it
of them,
less
was just
likely your
listed as
client
present,
did
and
this?
the other it was just
What is the
listed as
point
present,
of this?
And it was qualified with the word trace, meaning very small concentration. The presence of a medication in the liver or the bile is only an indication that that person had taken that medication in a relatively recent time frame. I can't give you an exact time frame for how long Benadryl would stay in the liver or in the bile, but it's indication of relatively recent usage because many drugs and medications are metabolized or broken down in the liver, so you can find them or their breakdown products in the liver. And because the liver secretes the bile, you can frequently find them in the bile itself. All that means is that the person had taken it and had metabolized it. The distinction here is that if you want to conclude that a person is under the influence of that drug or medication, that it's active at the time, you have to find it in the blood, because it's only when it's in the bloodstream does that indicate that it is circulating around the body and having an effect on you. If you take Benadryl for a period of time, then you stop taking it, you will then have some period of time later after it clears from your blood where it can still be in your liver, but it's no longer affecting you. So having found it in the liver in one and the bile in the other tells us absolutely nothing about whether it was having any effect on them at the time they died.
Again, this dude's testimony is laced with
Now,
Benadryl.
Were the bodies out of rigor mortis?
The observations made at the death scene that afternoon, the bodies of John Smith and Richard Smith were in mild degree of rigor mortis. And then on the following day at the autopsy, the rigor mortis had dissipated completely.
I don't recall, but
At the
there may
death
have been
scene,
something
the body
like
of,
that.
of Von Seal Smith did not have rigor mortis, so that had actually passed through.
Why would there be slight rigor mortis on John and Richard and no rigor mortis on Von Seal?
The body of Von Seal Smith appears to have progressed a little further in the postmortem changes than did the bodies of John and Richard Smith. Now, why she had moved a little farther and a little faster, I can't say with certainty. We don't have a room temperature or a body temperature on her at the scene, but several factors are in play and several factors might be in play. What I can tell you is in play here is that, number one, she was obese, and obesity tends to hold the body heat in after death, and that accelerates these postmortem processes, especially things like rigor mortis and the beginning of decomposition, because those are chemical processes, and warmer temperature makes chemical processes go faster. So
I'm going to
obesity
decompose
plays a role,
faster.
though in fairness, all three of them were. I also note that she was found under the much larger pile of clothing. So she had more material on top of her body that would then hold in the heat. That might account for the fact that she advanced a little farther and a little faster than the two men did.
Go ahead.
I don't know, because we don't have a room temperature measurement. I don't know if that room was warmer than the other room. That's one possibility. And then the other possibility that I can't prove is that the issue of diabetes. If her blood sugar were out of control, it could have contributed to her progressing faster than the other men.
Were you surprised that the temperature of Von Seal was not taken?
Yes, I was.
Why?
Well, the medical examiner representatives did a thorough job in terms of documenting the conditions of the bodies at the scene, which is extremely important, because by the time you get to the autopsy, the bodies have been moved. They've typically been refrigerated overnight. There's more passage of time. So the postmortem condition of the body, things like rigor mortis, is much less reliable the next day at the autopsy as compared to the observation at the scene. So they did document those things at the scene, and they went to the effort to do both body temperature and room temperature for both of the men, which I thought was very helpful. I don't really understand why, if you're doing that work and getting that level of detail on two of the three victims, why you would not do it on the third.
There was some conversation yesterday that one of the reasons that Von Seal's body temperature was not taken was because of the decomposition of her body at the time she was found. Can you address that?
Yes, there's no reason not to try to take her temperature, even if she's undergoing some decomposition. Sure, there is the possibility that the body temperature measurement may not be as reliable, or you might think twice about it, but there's no physical or technical reason you can't take the you can't take the temperature of a body that has slightly more advanced decomposition. It's not like she was skeletonized where there's no body tissue to measure anymore. So it easily could have been done, and in my opinion, since they went to that trouble for the other two, they should have done it for her too.
Therefore, not guilty.
Does that also hold true for not getting the room temperature?
Yes, sir.
Now,
5 minutes.
the
5
live
minutes,
one more
people.
just
Hang in
doesn't
there.
really factor into when the time of death was, or the day of death?
Correct.
The day
Live
of the
mortis,
dead.
first of all, is much too variable in when it becomes fixed, when it comes on, when it becomes fixed. So it's really not very helpful and very precise. It's much better as an indication of death, and it is much more useful in terms of positioning of the body and whether a body has been moved after death. But for time of death, it really doesn't help.
Now, if you would, please discuss the body temperatures of John and Richard Smith and how that plays into what their day of death could have been.
Yes, the two factors that I think are most important here for my estimation of date of death, or I keep referring to postmortem interval, because even though that's a little maybe more confusing terminology, what I'm really trying to determine is, can I figure out roughly how long has it been since death, as opposed to, I don't want to buy into terminology like,
Did they
I
all
can
wear
give you
sugar
the
masks?
time of
You know,
death.
like the sugar
But
skull masks, and
the two factors
and celebrate
were
Dia
the
de los
rigor mortis
Muertos. Is
that
that what
we've
they did? They
discussed to some
celebrated Day of the
degree, and the
Dead.
temperature that you've just now asked me about. And I think the body temperature for
Dia de
these
los
two men
Muertos.
is very important. We have measured room temperatures for both of them at 72.2 degrees, so
Hey.
kind of within the realm of what I would characterize as normal room temperature. That's important because the literature and the experience as to cooling of a body depends on various factors, one of which is the ambient temperature. So it makes a big difference if you have somebody at roughly normal room temperature, the 68, 72 range, as opposed to a person who dies in the middle of a snowstorm where it's 20 degrees. So starting from
Like someone
that
in
point
Canton,
of a
Massachusetts,
quote unquote normal room temperature, the two men had body temperatures that were down. One was down 16 degrees and the other 14.7 degrees. And I'm basing that on using 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit as a normal body temperature. And again, in fairness, that's also the normal body temperature that we think of, 98.6, is the middle of the bell curve.
Oh, hey.
Body temperatures do vary from person to person. They vary from time to time during the day in the same person. But in order to get some reasonable average that fits for humans, 98.6 is a very good starting point. So the two.
Excuse me,
Yes.
could I? The testimony was that John was 6'4" and 293 pounds, and Richard was 6'5" and 311 pounds. You're aware of that?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And what that really speaks to, their height is not germane by itself to the body temperature issue, although the combination of height and weight is what really allows us to assess state of nutrition, in particular obesity, and both of those gentlemen would qualify for being diagnosed as being obese. The importance of that being that obese people have thicker fat pads under their skin, and it holds the body heat in longer, so they'll cool somewhat slower. But we have the two of them in a room with the same room temperature, and the two body temperatures were measured within about a half an hour of each other, roughly the 5:30 p.m. range that day. And so you have one is about 16 degrees of body temperature loss. The other one, I said 14.7. Frankly, the 0.7 is probably shaving it closer than we can. So let's say roughly 15 and 16 degrees of body temperature loss for the two of them. So the first thing that comes to my mind is that the temperature loss for the two men in the same room temperature was very similar. I mean, 1 degree difference is not very much. So those are both consistent in terms of rate of cooling of two men in the same room temperature, both of whom are obese, both of whom have some of the clothing piled on top of them that would also keep the body heat in. In terms of using the loss of body temperature to try to make estimates of how long that person's been dead, we don't know exactly how fast each person will cool, but we do have literature that gives us guidelines and ranges for how rapidly human beings will cool under normal room temperature type settings.
Woohoo! 2 hours. We survived, people. All right. I need to mark the, oh, for God's sake. Well, that didn't work out very well. That's exactly what I didn't want to have happen. All right, I'll have to figure out where we are next week. We just might have to shave a few minutes off this guy's testimony. So what we've got here is we'll show you where we're sitting here. This is the one we're working on now, and I'm just gonna guess we're somewhere around here. This guy is just killed. We may even just skip this guy because we have about another hour left with this guy, and I don't think I can do that. But we are here on part 21, and then we should be able to do all three of these next week. The closing arguments for the defense, and then the last few witnesses. Maybe take 2 weeks to do that, and then the defense closing is an hour and a half long. So that'll be an episode in and of itself. And then we'll get the verdict. So 2, possibly 3 more weeks. I'm going to try to do it in 2. 1, 2. No, it'll be 3 more weeks. 3 more weeks of this, and we will be done. And then we're going to move on to a much, much more interesting trial. This has been fun. This has been fun to poke fun at with all the names and everything else and the weird circumstances surrounding it. But we're coming to an end. Phew. I don't think it's been disappointing. We've been having fun with it. Anyway, 3 more weeks, then we'll get on to a new trial. That is all she wrote for today, people. Real quickly, the 171 of you that have suffered through this whole thing and are still here. Well, I don't know. You may have joined 2 minutes ago. I don't know. But the 169 of you that are still here, here's what's coming up. Tomorrow, Friday, I don't know yet. It's either it'll be Friday evening, whatever happens, Friday evening U.S. time. Either we'll be doing an Unexplained with Flux and having a guest who is a Bigfoot hunter, ghost hunter, and possibly a medium. If the guest can't make it, if she can't make it, we will reschedule probably for the 31st. So if we don't do the Unexplained tomorrow, I'm thinking of doing a gaming stream playing Phoenix Wright, Ace Attorney, and you can help me win a case for Phoenix Wright, Ace Attorney, and sort of have a chill gaming stream. And next week, pretty much all next week, I guess, will be a new and interesting, not a new current case, but a case that's involving it's a new case for us, but not a new case, if you know what I mean. But it is involving some people that you might be very well acquainted with. So stay tuned for that. Megan and I are going to be doing that all next week. We're still working out the logistics, but it will be happening. So stay tuned. Do not want to miss next week. This is a wild, interesting case. And then next Friday evening U.S. time will be the new and improved, hopefully, F It Friday. So bring all your shekels, bring your dineros, bring your pesos, bring everything you got for next week's F It Friday, where we just say F it, and we have a big panel of guests on. We talk about things. We used to do $100 gets me a shot. I would do a shot every $100 that comes in, but that's not sustainable. We did it for about 2 years. I just can't do it anymore. I don't look forward to F It Fridays. I hate my life for 3 or 4 days after doing the F It Fridays. That ain't working out. So what we're going to be doing is the F It Friday fickle Ferris wheel of fortune, or something along those lines. We'll have to work it out. But it's going to have some rewards, it's going to have some punishments, and it's still going to have some alcohol on it. So don't worry, there still will be drinks consumed, but there's also going to be other things and we'll talk about it during the members only stream this weekend. Get some ideas from you guys how to fine tune it, what things should be included. But it should be more fun, it should be more lucid, and I should enjoy it. So same thing, just bring all your money and do it that day. All right, thank you very much for that, everybody. That's just that's what's going to be coming up in the next week. And that's everything. F it, says Amil. Thank you so very much for just saying F it. I'm trying to think of if I'm missing anything. I'm not. No, MDMA is not on the wheel. That would be ridiculously illegal. And I don't even know where to get it here. Mods, thanks. You guys are awesome as always. Chat, thank you for sitting through this very, very difficult day. They didn't show Hartung only twice the entire time in 2 hours. Ugh. So we only got one zombie noise. We didn't get Lurch. We didn't get Dracula. We didn't get they're coming to get you, Barbara. We didn't get any of that. So maybe next week. Maybe next week. Well, not next week, but the week after next when we do this again. All right. I had a great day off work. It was fun. It's a dual stream day today. As I'm going to get ready to go to bed and go to work for one day, and then it's the weekend. Thanks, everybody. Again, repeat mods. Thank you for the support. Chat. Thank you for the super chats, the gifted memberships, all that. And thank you for just being here and making today's Throwback Thursday a little less painful. All right, guys, take care. I'm just going to send you off into the wild, see where you end up, and catch you tomorrow. Friday evening, U.S. time, 9 p.m. Eastern. See ya. Bye. As soon as I find my outro music. Bye. Where's my outro music? There it is.